Ethan had always believed that love could overcome anything until the day it didn't. At 66 years old, Ethan, a retired accountant living in a quiet suburb of Denver, Colorado, struck the jackpot. Literally, he won $20 million in the state lottery, a stroke of luck no one ever sees coming. His heart overflowed with joy, not for himself, but for his children, Mason, his eldest son, and Emily, his spirited daughter. With his birthday just a week away, Ethan spent days preparing a heartfelt surprise. His plan was simple. After taxes, he would use part of the winnings to buy them each a luxury home and gift them a check for $1 million apiece. He cooked their favorite dishes, set the table with silverware passed down from his mother, and waited, and waited. By 10 p.m., neither Mason nor Emily had shown up. The silence in the house became deafening. Calls went unanswered. Messages were left unread. What was meant to be the happiest night of his life became a slow descent into loneliness. Little did Ethan know, this night would unravel a painful truth, one that would change everything he thought he knew about love, loyalty, and family. Ethan barely slept that night. The untouched food still sat on the table, growing cold with each passing hour. At 11:47 p.m., his phone finally rang. It was Emily. "Dad, I'm so sorry," she said breathlessly. "Work was insane today. I just couldn't get away. It's too late now, so I'll head back to my apartment." "Happy birthday, though." She didn't give him a chance to reply before the call ended. Ethan stared at the screen in stunned silence. His daughter's office was far from home. He had once paid for her to have a comfortable apartment near work to make her life easier. Still holding on to hope, he waited for Mason to call. Nothing. He wrapped up the untouched dishes and tucked the real estate contracts and the million-dollar checks back into the drawer of his nightstand. The silence of the house echoed with disappointment. When morning came, his phone remained eerily quiet. No birthday wishes, no apologies, just silence. Determined to shake off the lingering sadness, Ethan took a morning walk. Outside, he ran into his neighbor Grace, walking her dog. She noticed his tired eyes and joked, "Let me guess, you cooked all day yesterday for those kids and they flaked on you again." Ethan forced a smile, too embarrassed to admit the truth. But before he could respond, another voice, sharp and mocking, cut through the crisp morning air. "Oh, please, don't act like he's some martyr," said his former co-worker and longtime nemesis Carla. "He's always bragging about how close he is to Mason and Emily." What a joke. Carla, a bitter woman who had always held a grudge against Ethan for earning the promotion she wanted decades ago, stepped forward with a smirk. "You want to know where your loving kids were last night?" Ethan tried to walk away, but Carla pulled out her phone and shoved it toward him. "Just watch," she sneered. The screen lit up with a video, a lavish restaurant glowing with golden light. There stood Chloe, Ethan's ex-wife's new partner, dressed in red, smiling, arm in arm with Ethan's ex, Daniel. Behind them stood two towering banners. "Happy 25th anniversary, Daniel and Chloe," and "Happy birthday, Chloe." Then came the crushing blow. Mason and Emily stood by their father, laughing, toasting, gifting expensive bracelets and brandy. Ethan's granddaughter, Emily's 5-year-old daughter, clung to Chloe's hand and chirped, "Grandma Chloe, you're so much prettier than my other grandma. I want you to come to my sports day." Ethan's world cracked wide open. Tears threatened, but he held them back. Carla, ever cruel, delivered one final blow. "They shower her with gifts, and what did they give you, huh? A missed call? Ethan didn't answer. He couldn't. His hands trembled as he walked away. That moment on a quiet suburban sidewalk, Ethan's heart broke in silence. But in that same silence, something else was born. Resolve. Ethan returned home, his legs weak beneath him. As he stepped inside, the silence of the house wrapped around him like a cold shroud. He sat down heavily on the couch, where the real estate contracts and million-dollar checks still lay tucked away in the nightstand. For the first time in years, he felt truly alone. But it wasn't just loneliness, it was betrayal. The pain in his chest spread like wildfire as memories came crashing in. Late nights feeding the twins while his ex-wife slept soundly. The sacrifices he made after the divorce, selling their family home to fund college tuition and rent. He remembered Mason arriving at his door one freezing Christmas Eve, chapped lips and tear-streaked face, crying about how his stepmother, Chloe, slapped him and made him sleep outside for stealing a rib from dinner. Ethan had taken him in, no questions asked, and now that same boy stood by Chloe's side like she was family. Later that night, Ethan heard the familiar jingle of keys. The front door creaked open. A small voice rang out. "Grandpa, are we playing hide and seek?" Vivian, Emily's daughter, ran toward the bedroom, bursting through the door with a wide grin. Behind her came Mason and Emily, their expressions stiff and unreadable. "Dad?" Mason called out. "You here?" When they found him sitting in bed, his eyes puffy from sleeplessness, their tone shifted. Emily rushed forward. "Dad, I'm so sorry. We were really busy yesterday, but we brought cake. Vivian wanted to see you so badly." Mason nodded quickly, trying to salvage the moment. "Yeah, work's been insane lately. But hey, it's your birthday weekend. We came to celebrate." Ethan looked at them, really looked. And for the first time, he saw them not as the children he raised, but as adults who had made their choices and who had lied. He asked calmly, "Did you go to their anniversary party yesterday?" The air in the room went still. Emily's eyes dropped. Mason scratched the back of his neck. "Dad, it was just a formality. Chloe invited us weeks ago. We didn't know it would be such a big deal." Ethan stared at the small cartoon cake on the table. Elsa from Frozen, clearly picked out by Vivian, a child's offering. That was all they had brought. Emily finally broke. "Dad, please stop living in the past. Chloe and Daniel are good to us. Dad can help get Lucifer a job at City Hall. We're just trying to build a future." "And you expect me to fund it?" Ethan asked, his voice calm but cold. "After you left me waiting on my birthday?" Mason stepped in, defensive. "We didn't mean it like that." Ethan stood slowly, hands shaking, not from age but from a rising storm within. "Get out," he said quietly. "If Chloe is your mother now, go to her. I no longer have children." They left, cake in hand, granddaughter in tow. And with them went Ethan's final illusions. Ethan sat in his living room long after the door had slammed shut, the echo of Vivian's words haunting him. "So, Chloe is my real grandma now." Her innocent voice pierced deeper than any insult. He walked slowly to his bedroom, opened the drawer and took out the 2 luxury home contracts and checks meant for Mason and Emily. Without hesitation, he ripped them to shreds. Piece by piece, year by year, it all unraveled into nothing. If they had a father now, if they had a new mother, then let them go. The next morning, Ethan went straight to his lawyer's office. With unshakable calm, he drafted a new will. Upon his death, every asset, from his investments to his retirement funds, would be donated to children's charities and animal shelters. Mason and Emily were to receive nothing. He also called a real estate agent to list the house that Mason and his wife had been living in, the one still legally under Ethan's name. Later that day, with his spare key, he unlocked the home while they were at work, allowed the agent to take photographs, and walked out without looking back. On his way out, he passed the luxury villa he had planned to buy as a gift. The salesperson called again, hopeful for a final decision. Ethan declined. "Plans changed," he said flatly. The voice on the other end pressed him for a reason, but Ethan was already 1,000 miles away. In the past, in the moments that built this painful epiphany, he remembered selling his old house to fund Mason's wedding. He remembered paying for Emily's $150,000 a year private university tuition, her gap year expenses, her rent. He had done it all willingly, with a father's heart. But what had he truly bought? Not love, not respect, just entitlement. That night, Ethan didn't cry. He poured himself a glass of wine, sat on the porch, and watched the sunset bleed into the horizon. The air was cool, and for the first time in decades, he felt weightless. Not because he was happy, but because he had finally stopped clinging to what was already gone. He opened his laptop, looked through listings, and bought a small move-in ready villa with a garden. Then he called a pet adoption center and scheduled a visit. The silence of his life wouldn't be filled with broken voices anymore. It would be filled with purring, leaves rustling, and his own quiet laughter. The next weekend, he adopted 2 cats, Theo and Olive. Their warm presence curled around his ankles as he planted marigolds and tomatoes in his garden beds. He still remembered Mason's outrage when the eviction notice arrived. He ignored the calls, the emails, the guilt-tripping voicemails. That part of his life was over, because Ethan had finally realized there was a difference between letting go and setting yourself free. In the months that followed, Ethan didn't just rebuild, he redefined. He terminated the lease on his old rental apartment and officially moved into his cozy villa on the edge of Boulder, Colorado. With its private garden, floor-to-ceiling windows, and sun-drenched kitchen, it was the kind of space that felt alive. He hired a cheerful housekeeper named Hannah, who came in 3 times a week, and each morning, Ethan would sip his coffee beside Theo and Olive as the sunrise painted the sky in amber and rose. But he wasn't finished yet. One afternoon, while browsing a local community board at the cafe, he noticed a small flyer. Retail space available, heart of the historic district. Something stirred inside him. It had been years since he dreamed for himself. Years since he had wanted something that didn't revolve around his children. Ethan took the flyer, visited the space the next day, and instantly fell in love. It was an old bookstore with brick walls and creaky wooden floors. Dusty, but full of charm. And just like that, the idea hit him. A cafe bookstore. A place for warmth, words, and people who needed a haven. He hired contractors, interior designers, and even some local college students to bring it to life. Power outlets were installed at every seat. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with both classics and contemporary reads. A coffee bar offered everything from artisan lattes to warm muffins and vegan scones. By fall, the Velvet Page opened its doors. It didn't make him rich, but it made him whole. People came in curious, but stayed because the place had soul. Elderly visitors came for poetry nights. Young professionals found it the perfect remote workspace. Mothers read to their toddlers in the children's corner, while students huddled over textbooks. Ethan, always with a book in hand, became known as the smiling gentleman by the window. And then something unexpected happened. Local bloggers started talking about the cozy cafe with the soft jazz and handwritten book recommendations. Social media influencers tagged it as the hidden gem of Boulder. Business picked up. Lines formed on weekends. And every time a young person smiled and said, "Thank you, sir," Ethan's heart felt a little lighter. One afternoon, while wiping down a table, he overheard a young woman tell her friend, "I wish my dad were like him. He looks so peaceful." Ethan smiled, not because he needed the approval, but because he had learned to be at peace with himself. While Mason and Emily spiraled in their own broken choices, Ethan had built something lasting. Not a legacy of wealth, but one of meaning. He had offered jobs to struggling students, second chances to people with disabilities, and kindness to those who walked through his doors with heavy hearts. He had once lived for others. Now he lived for himself. And that finally was enough. Time, Ethan learned, is the most honest healer. As the velvet page flourished, so did he. He no longer checked his phone expecting texts from Mason or Emily. He stopped replaying the betrayals and broken birthdays in his mind. Instead, he focused on mastering new coffee blends, learning about rare books, and cultivating his blooming garden. His cats, Theo and Olive, were always nearby, curling on windowsills or nudging their heads into his hands for affection. But peace never stays untouched. One crisp winter morning, a knock came at the cafe's back door, the private entrance Ethan used during early shifts. It was Emily. She stood with swollen eyes, clutching her coat tightly around her. Her hair was unkempt, her hands trembling. "Can I talk to you?" she whispered. Ethan nodded but said nothing. He motioned for her to sit at the quiet corner table, the one near the fireplace. She placed her hands on the table like they were trying to hold her together. Then, the truth spilled out. Her husband, Lucifer, had cheated. The woman he had been seeing was already 6 months pregnant, and when Emily confronted him, he struck her. Ethan didn't react outwardly. His heart squeezed, not from sympathy, but from recognition. She was walking a path he had once known too well. "I'm 4 months pregnant," Emily said through sobs. "I don't want to raise this child like this. I don't want him to see me broken." Ethan finally spoke. "Then don't." She looked up, startled. "You have a choice. You always did," he said, voice firm but calm. "You don't have to stay. You don't have to suffer to prove anything. Walk away and build something for yourself." Emily cried harder, and Ethan sat with her until she was done. But when she asked to come live with him for a while, he shook his head gently. "This isn't a shelter for broken promises," he said. "It's a space for growth, for people who've chosen to rise, not return." He handed her a warm sandwich and a contact card for a women's support group. "Start here. When you've stood on your own feet, come have a coffee. I'll be here." Emily left quietly. She didn't return for months. In that time, Ethan grew stronger. He started offering free financial literacy classes every Thursday evening at the cafe. He launched a weekly silent book hour for people with social anxiety. He even adopted a third cat, this one missing a leg, whom he named Jasper. Mason never reached out, but one day a local reporter visited the cafe, impressed by its community impact. When the article published, Ethan's phone buzzed with dozens of messages. One stood out. "Dad, I saw the story. I'm proud of you. I'm trying to be better." It was from Emily. He didn't reply. He didn't need to. because he knew true growth doesn't need applause, it just needs roots. On his 68th birthday, Ethan woke up to the soft purring of Theo, Olive, and Jasper curled around his legs. The sun filtered through the curtains, casting warm gold across the bedroom floor. There were no balloons, no messages, no chaotic family brunches. But there was peace, and that, Ethan had learned, was more precious than applause. He got dressed, brewed his favorite cinnamon maple latte, and walked to the velvet page. A bouquet of sunflowers waited at the counter, a gift from Hannah, his housekeeper, and the young baristas who now called him Pops. There was also a card scribbled in mismatched handwriting. To the man who gave us all a second chance. Happy birthday, Ethan. He smiled, tucking the card in his apron pocket. Customers trickled in, as they did every morning. A young mother with 2 toddlers. A retired teacher who never missed Thursday book club. An anxious teenager who only ever whispered her coffee order, but always sat near the corner shelf marked, "You are safe here." And Ethan knew. He had created more than a cafe. He had created a sanctuary. Later that evening, as twilight settled over the city, the bell above the cafe door jingled. Emily walked in, gently holding the hand of a toddler boy with her same caramel eyes. She looked different now. Tired, yes, but grounded. No makeup, no expensive heels. Just a simple blue coat and a quiet resolve. Ethan looked up from his seat behind the counter. Their eyes met, and she gave a small nod. She didn't expect forgiveness. She wasn't begging for redemption. She was just present. Her son ran toward the shelf labeled "For Little Readers," and Emily followed slowly, seating herself across from Ethan at the quiet window table. "I'm working now," she said. "I left Lucifer for good. Moved cities. Started over." Ethan nodded. "I don't expect anything from you," she continued, her voice steady, "but I wanted you to meet your grandson." She looked down at her hands. "I tell him stories, you know, about the bookstore with the kind man and the warm lattes. I didn't say it was you, not yet, but maybe someday." For a moment, silence settled between them. Not the heavy kind that drowns you, but the stillness that follows a storm. Ethan stood, walked over to the boy, and knelt down. "Hey, little man, what's your name?" "Jude," the boy chirped. "Nice to meet you, Jude," Ethan said with a smile. "Want to help me pick the best book in the store?" The boy's face lit up. As Ethan led him to the picture books, Emily quietly wiped a tear from her cheek, her heart quietly healing, moment by moment. And for Ethan, that evening became more than a birthday. It became a beginning, not for what was lost, but for what still could be. Because freedom isn't just walking away. Sometimes it's choosing who to let back in. Sometimes the deepest heartbreak doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people we once gave everything to. Ethan's story is a powerful reminder that love, no matter how unconditional, must never be blind. Years of sacrifice, selflessness, and second chances taught him a painful truth. Loyalty cannot be forced, and gratitude cannot be bought, not even with million-dollar gifts or a lifetime of giving. But in losing what he once held dear, Ethan gained something more powerful: freedom. He learned that healing doesn't come from fixing others. It comes from choosing yourself. It means drawing boundaries, living with intention, and no longer begging for a place at a table where love is conditional. You don't need applause to prove your worth. You don't need family ties to define your value. You are allowed to walk away and still be whole. If you've ever felt taken for granted, used, or forgotten by the people you love, Remember, it's not selfish to say, enough. Set boundaries. Reclaim your time. Pour your energy into people, places, and passions that give back. Whether that's a quiet bookstore, a cozy garden, or a new career, your life is still yours to shape. Let go of the guilt that tells you love must always hurt. Let go of the belief that sacrifice equals loyalty. And most of all, let go of the fear that walking away means failure. Because sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is choose yourself. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like and share with your friends. Your support keeps these stories alive. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new episode. And if today's story touched your heart, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Take care, stay well, and see you in the next story.